Greetings. Hello, everybody. Hoping you are well this Sunday afternoon. Happy to have the opportunity to engage you again with another episode of Our Ancestors' Voices. We sincerely hope you are at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual health today, and that you're doing as well and reaching your highest level of potential that you can reach on all levels. And we thank you for joining us for this critical discussion entitled College Education and Class Suicide. What is the essence around achieving a college education? When you do that, is it your personal responsibility? Or rather, I'm sorry, is it your personal achievement? Or is there more to it than that? And that's what we're going to discuss for the next hour. And so we thank you for joining us to engage this discussion. We start, as we always do, and we always will, by acknowledging the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, whose land this is that we sit on today. I'm in Miwok territory here in what's known as Sacramento, California, United Snakes of America. And this will always be Miwok territory. It will always be the land of the indigenous people. And they are engaged in a righteous struggle to get their land back. And we stand in 100% solidarity with them in their efforts to get their land back, because that's the just thing that should happen. That's right. That should happen. It was stolen from them and they have a right to have it back. And also because their victory is a victory for us, because the only way that they can be victorious is by being able to defeat Western imperialism. And so obviously that's the same goal that we have. So we stand with our indigenous family members in their quest for self-determination. And of course, we always stand with our African ancestors. We're talking about those who came before us and who fought uncompromisingly against colonialism, against slavery, against all of the oppression that we've experienced over the last 500 years. And those wonderful souls are the only reason that we are here today, because of their sacrifice. And so we honor and we respect them and we appreciate all that they had to go to in order for us to be here today. And that's kind of gives you a clue for what this next hour will be, because we see the world that way. We see that those that came before us and gave a sacrifice, we have a obligation to continue their principled efforts and continue to make contributions for our forward progress. So we thank you all for joining us. And we just start with our usual introductions. Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And the AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party, which is based in Africa. And our objective is Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa, one unified socialist Africa. We believe that, as Kwame Nkrumah indicates in the book on the right, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, that until Africa is free, no African anywhere on earth will ever have freedom. There are 2 billion of us scattered around the world in 120 countries. And all of us, wherever we are on earth, are on the bottom of the societies that we exist in. And we know the reason for this is because Africa is subjugated, Africa is exploited, and we will never have freedom while our mother is suffering. We have to build up our mother Africa, and that's how we all get free, no matter where we are on earth. And that's what we mean when we say Pan-Africanism. Uniting the African continent from the 58 some odd territories that currently exist, including the islands surrounding the continent, into one continental government that is dedicated to building socialism. And that will only come through a revolutionary process. That'll only come through a process where we organize the masses of people. And there is an element of armed struggle engaged in that. There's no way around that. And that's a necessary thing, because the people in power never give up power voluntarily. That's never happened in history. The only people who have been able to seize power from the people in power is because they organized and they took it. And that's exactly what we intend to do. And we have an entire strategy that we are working that's designed on the ground throughout Africa and the world, designed to do that. And you can find out more about that by going to the APRP site, which we'll talk about at the end. But our work, again, is outlined in the handbook that's displayed on the right. And some of the logos there are some of the Pan-African formations that we do a lot of work with to facilitate building capacity to achieve our objective of Pan-Africanism. And this program every week is hosted by myself, Ajamu Umi, and my daughter, Shakura Umi. We are both active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And this program, along with many other programs that the party does, is designed to attempt to educate people about our work to engage in a grassroots revolutionary movement all over the planet Earth, you all. So we're happy that you're here to join us for this discussion on college degrees and class suicide. And so we will get started. I'll hand it over to Shakura. Shakura, how are you today?
Greetings. Thank you so much. I'm doing great. How are you? No, I appreciate that. Greetings, everyone. Appreciate you all being here. You know, I continue to just be blown away because where I live are some of the most highest cases right now. So it's PTSD of it starting back over again in terms of people not valuing other people's lives and choosing not to wear masks and things like that. So we don't say lightly that we really hope you all are in good spirits and to the best of your ability managing all that you have going on and still finding it a priority in time to join us here Sunday nights, because this work is truly, like, I think what's keeping me going when I find dark spaces and when I find it hard to move forward, because capitalism can be relentless, if nothing else, and imperialism can be relentless. So it goes without saying that we appreciate you all making the time to be here. And we hope that you not only are inviting other people to come, but even if folks that you're inviting can't come to these seminars, maybe you're bringing that conversation up when you have your Monday morning meetings, or maybe you're telling other people, you know, I was on the seminar Sunday night, and we actually talked about how being a college educated professional could actually be detrimental to society, depending on how that education is being used. Like, don't be afraid to stretch this conversation out. Don't be afraid to pass it on. And certainly don't feel like it's not your responsibility, because we all have a role to play in making the conditions for oppressed, colonized people improve, okay? So we definitely want to think about that, and think about that on a really large scale, especially as it relates to today's topic, because, you know, today's topic is near and dear to my heart personally, because I constantly struggle with helping other people understand that this is not the road that I'm trying to pave out for myself. Why? Because for the last 88 weeks, we've been telling you all that the society we live in is structured and formatted and baselined off of individualism. So the first point on the slide talks about how when you understand that you are not the reason that you have access to a college education, the moment you understand that you're not the reason that your tuition has been paid, the moment you understand that you're not the reason that you were able to walk across that stage, I guarantee you someone else had something to do with your ability to have tuition paid, or your ability to go to classes, your ability to have a car to drive on campus, your ability to move into the dorms. Somebody might have helped you move into the dorms, and certainly someone helping you walk across the stage. You did not accomplish that by yourself. And I challenge anyone on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, knock on my door. I don't care. I will find a way to refute your argument, because that would indicate that you are not acknowledging all of the struggle and strife that our ancestors went through, because clearly those are examples of people who struggled for you to be in a position you're in today. And I'm not even talking about current century people. I'm just talking about ancestors as one example of that. And so on the note of ancestors, I remember that I struggled with one of my classmates a couple of years ago, because he was articulating that he didn't understand. He was making an argument basically that, you know, he understands that Africans struggle with quote unquote speaking English. And he's trying to, I guess, modify that society needs to understand that. And we need to grade easier on African students because their vernacular is not the same. And I challenged the argument. I said, well, you know, so-and-so, English is not our first language, though. So, I mean, it makes sense that we struggle with that, but we don't need to assimilate and try to, quote unquote, speak it better. We should actually try to learn our native language, because that's not our normal language. That's not our preferred language. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, what schools were we going to on the plantation to learn English in the first place? I said, we weren't even allowed to be educated. And that's a good point. And I thought to myself, but how could you not have put that first when you were making the argument? I mean, I guess you thought that we were all sitting in the classroom side by side with the European students. Like, we had to pick up these words while we were on the plantation picking that cotton. We had to pick up words and try to formulate sentences and build sentences. We were doing declarative and independent clauses before we even knew what that crap was. So don't come at me with that. And that's why I'm super sensitive personally, because all of my English teachers have always attacked me about my writing and my English. But beyond that, I'm sensitive because we literally had to build from nothing. That's the kind of people we are, where we literally taught ourselves how to survive when we were not welcome from the moment they dragged us on them ships and the moment they dragged us off. We had to make a way for ourselves. And so, speaking to the next point, of course, that makes sense that a lot of our Africans nowadays, because we had to make a way out of nothing, we think that that is the only option that we have. And we're going to talk more about that in the next slide. But just because you had to start off with something doesn't mean you manage that and maintain that ideology. You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to be willing to have a growth mindset. Otherwise, no offense, but why even live if you're not ready to enhance your brain? As my dad has said countless times, your brain is a muscle. And more than that, what are you using the information you're obtaining for? I know one of my family members took a quote from some European philosopher who probably stole it from an African long ago. But my family member says, small minds discuss people, medium-sized minds discuss events, and large-sized minds discuss ideas to change masses of people's situations. So, again, growth mindset means that you're thinking about large ideas because you're trying to change the way things are. And so we're thinking about this second bullet because we have to understand that that's the objective of what education is. It's supposed to be a tool for you to use it to change the conditions. And since we already know that you can't be individualized when you go about changing those conditions, then you already understand that you should only be using that as much as you can to make the reality for other people differently. When you obtain a public health degree, that means you understand that your objective, possibly, if you have any ability, is to go to Cuba and study with other health professionals so that you can truly, truly, truly apply what you have learned, not just in Cuba, but when you come back to wherever you're going, because now you have a socialist perspective on how to value other people's health. If your thing is business, then that means you're understanding how to study that and apply it so that some of our countries at home that are currently reaching independence or have already reached independence and are still trying to push the neocolonialists out, you can help them figure out how do we continue to maintain our economic new system that is not under the mind of the Portuguese or the British or the French or whatever the colonizer is that we have moved out, but instead helping them figure out how do they maintain their new way of life so that they cannot be dependent on the same colonizer that has been exploiting and raping and oppressing them for thousands and thousands of years. And just speaking to the last point real quick, currently in my work study, we're reading Kwame Nkrumah, Africa Must Unite. And just in the 70 to 141 pages, this brother really laid it out on the line and talked about how his first couple of years in office, because we know that he was the first president of Ghana, he talks about how difficult it was after he won his election because they had a threat to their education system. So a lot of the Ghanaians were not able to reach the same level of education that he needed them to reach, which means you have farmers, you have miners, you have different people who can work with tools, you have people who could potentially teach students but are not certified because the certification process had to be rerouted to become a teacher. So he talks about all these skills and all these people who have these skills, but yet they're stuck and hitting the same wall. And so because of that, Ghana is not moving forward. And if Ghana is not moving forward, the whole continent is not moving forward. So Nkrumah goes on to say, not only do we need to have a way to help these teachers reach their certification, but education is the key to all of this. And we need our children to understand that, because if our children are not educated, which is the future, then they're not going to lead us to that. So I think just all in all, just understanding that That degree that you obtain is not about you, because your ancestors made it possible for you to be educated in the first place. And you always have your humble pie slice with you when you understand that our people weren't even allowed to be educated. So just think at how privileged you are that you have the opportunity to do that. And again, because our people weren't allowed to be educated, that speaks to how incredible we are. That speaks to who you come from, because you are your ancestors. And because of your ancestors getting beaten and killed because they were educating themselves, that's why you can sit at the University of Memphis now, or you can sit at Santa Barbara University or Cal State or Cornell, whatever university you're attending. So you have to humble yourself and remember, it didn't start with you. It's not going to stop with you. And you certainly need to keep the struggle going, because if you don't, then everything we have worked up to this point is for nothing. And I refuse to believe that. Because I'm allergic to wasting time. That's what my mom says. Next slide, please. All right, I got to wrap it up because it's time to pass it back to my dad. Okay, so moving on, just to say, we have to also remember all the bullets that you see on this slide, we meant to write them in a very snarky and sarcastic tone, because that's what the ideologies are that are fed to us. They're spoon-fed to us every single day from the moment we get accepted into the program. I'll never forget when I first got note that I got accepted into my doctorate program. One of the organizations that I work with here, I've mentioned BStars to you all plenty of times. I told two of my mentors, and they decided to throw me a party at our meeting that we had that night. Now, of course, I didn't ask for that. I wanted to actually just tell the people, hey, I got accepted into this program, which means I'm going to be able to collect more information to be able to do well for African moms and femme people who are of African descent, who are trying to give lactation, human milk to their kids. And I'm so excited to do that. I know that's a disparity that we face. And now I have the capability with more access to education to be able to do that and to figure out ways to have sustainable interventions in place so that we can continue to get the help and support that we need. So they decided to throw this whole party and created a PowerPoint presentation and all these things about from the moment I moved to Memphis and all the work that I had been doing. And it made me really uncomfortable. Really, 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 really uncomfortable, because we say all the time in the party, we don't do stuff because we need the credit. We do it because I'm tired of femme African people dying. And I'm tired of femme African people's babies dying. I'm sick of it. I am so sick of it. So I want to do anything I can to help address that, prevent it, eradicate it, whatever word you want to substitute in place. That's what I'm working to do. So I pulled my mentor to the side and I said, you didn't have to do all of this. And she said, we want to hear you speak. And I said, well, I just want to let you all know this is our degree. It's not my degree. It's our degree. And if you don't believe me, I can give you my mentor's number right now and she'll tell you the same thing. I said that 3 years ago and I meant that. I said, this degree is for all of our people to advance forward. I don't feel like it's my degree. I feel like you all are going to be there helping me study. And when I graduate, I'm going to use this degree to make a difference for us, because we deserve to not be dying as much as we are. We deserve to be healthier. So just saying all that to say, we have to continue to remember that, again, education is a tool. So the question becomes, with any tool that you have, whether it's a screwdriver, whether it's a hammer, whether it's your brain, whether it's your ability to work out, whether it's your ability to manage time, those are all tools and skill sets that some people have. So how are you using them? Because if you're not using them to advance society, then that means you might not be using them to the most effective level that you can use them. And like any skill, if you do not manage it, meaning if you don't maintain it and use it, you will lose it. And we can't afford to lose skills that we already desperately need. As I just said, Kwame Nkrumah was talking about how we need miners, how we need people who teach, we need people who can be farmers. We need everybody, every single person on deck. And we need to think about it from a socialist standpoint, because that means we understand that all people can contribute to make the society for the masses better. And so again, we can't afford to lose skills. We need to manage, maintain, and hold on to them. And that means we need to use them to help advance the people. Again, if you're not using it for that, then is it a selfish reason that you're using it for? That's a reflective question that you need to really ask yourself. And what would your ancestors have done if they chose that same approach? Where would you be now? How better off would you be? You wouldn't be better off, because you probably would be lacking so many more things, because your ancestors are the reason that you're here today. So we have to understand that, and our job is to move forward. Our job is to advance. It's always about the people to come. It's never about you. You have to release that. It's never been about you, because the people before you never thought about it just being about them. They knew that there were more people to come. And quite frankly, they didn't want us to live in the same circumstances that they had to live in. So they did everything they could to eradicate that. And now it's our job to make it better for the children to come, the children who haven't even been conceived yet. That's our responsibility, y'all. That is our responsibility. I don't even have the ability to procreate a child right now. And I understand that the children that I may have come through my body later in my life, I need to work my behind off, because they do not deserve to live in this effed up world. They don't deserve that. We have disgraced them if we think that that's the best that we can do. Shame on us. And we should not be reprocreating if that's what we really think. We need to do better, and we can be better with organization and joining an organization. But it starts with us, and it starts with our skills and our education. The last thing I'll say is that I want to make sure that we remember that whatever you do, the narrative is that you're supposed to graduate from college, get your white picket fence, have your 2.5 kids, have your partner and your dog and whatever, and that's your life. And I can't tell you how boring that is to think about that, because again, you're not thinking about anybody who struggled for you to be in the position you're in. And so when we reverse that idea and we think about how the whole reason you became educated was because you did want to make a difference for the masses of people, just think about how much better you sleep at night knowing that you did something to impact people. I think that's what the Black Panther Black Panther members think about. Whenever they read about somebody who has the ability to go to a health clinic, they can smile because they were the foundation for why that is. Whenever they think about a child who now has a breakfast option at their elementary school or middle school, that's because they made that possible. Whenever they think about femme people getting screened for metastatic breast cancer, that's because the Black Panther Party made that important. We were not doing screenings for mammograms before the Black Panthers. And so I'm so grateful to them that they valued health on that level, because of them, we focus on that now, because we couldn't afford for some Africans to be prioritizing stuff in white supremacy. So we had to shut it down. And I'm so glad they did. And the same thing with labor unions. Labor unions are the reason that some of us have weekends off. Labor unions are the reasons that we can take smoke breaks or pump milk if we give our kids human milk. So we think about all the people who have used their education, their skill sets to benefit us, Black Panther Party and labor unions. And then we think about what we can do for the world in return. That's the dialectical approach. That's the yin and the yang. And without that, nothing else is going to prosper, because you have got to understand how you benefited from somebody else in order for you to help somebody else benefit in the long run. Please join an organization working for justice. Time is ticking and we are running out of time, y'all. Thank you so much and be safe.
Ashe, Ashe. Well, you weren't lying when you said that this issue today is near and dear to your heart. And I'm with you. It's near and dear to my heart as well, for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned. And I'm just going to try to continue on with the energy and fervor that you provided us with. Thank you again. And so the first question, this question of lies about the purpose of education needs to be addressed. And the first question is that you earned it, so it's your personal property. And this comes from, of course, the methodology in which we are conditioned and trained under the capitalist system. And what I mean by that, you all, is that everything that we understand is being promoted through the institutions that we participate in this society, the so-called education institutions, so-called faith institutions where we work, our social institutions, all of those institutions, they don't operate independent from one another. They all operate under a specific ideology. And that ideology is the capitalist ideology that promotes this concept that multinational corporations are the key to our survival, and that we have an obligation to ensure that their interests are maintained at all times in front of our own interests, and that we don't even really understand what our own interests are, because all we know is what they tell us. And they tell us, well, like Shakur said, well, what you have to do is work yourself to the bone for us, and in return for that, you'll get a house out of it. You'll get a vacation. You'll get a car, maybe an RV, something like that. You get to go to Europe because they're not trying to. People don't have the consciousness from that kind of ideology to go home to Africa. So that's what you'll do. And if you get a college degree or degrees, it intensifies your potential to be able to achieve that objective of this material elevation in your personal life. And I always equate it back to, how I was. Like, I barely made it out of high school. I graduated high school with a 1.75 GPA. I was all over the place. I was crazy, erratic. I was destructive. I was a product of this backward capitalist system. And I went to community college and I got my act together. And when I transferred to the university, I was in shock because I come from a solid working class background, meaning that I come from a background where my family understood that this system is not here to work in our interests. And we go to work every day to provide resources to sustain our family in spite of this backward system's constant efforts to sabotage us. So that working class perspective counters to like a petty bourgeoisie perspective, for example, where you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go to college and get these degrees and I'm proud to be an American and I have this opportunity of freedom, all of that backward nonsense. So it's contrary to that. So that's where I came from, was the working class perspective. And so I come to this university campus, and the first thing I noticed was the African fraternities and sororities and how they behaved and how they acted. And I actually ended up having a roommate who was a part of one of the African fraternities, very active in it, still active in it to this day. And he and I have remained very good friends for 40 years. And he's still very active in that fraternity. And I'm still active in what I was active in at that time, which at that time it was Pan-African student organizing. And obviously now it's evolved beyond student organizing to lifetime Pan-African organizing. And we talk all the time. We talked this week. And he reminded me that, I was so contrary to what they represented that there was actually an incident. I'll just say this. There was actually an incident involving the firing of a shotgun because I was so pissed off at how they conducted themselves. And he reminded me of that. I've forgotten all about that just this past week. And the reason why that happened is because I just didn't understand. Like, for me, I had to work so hard just to get to the point where I could, not be looking at being arrested or prison or something to that effect. That for me, from the very beginning that I even stepped on a university campus, it was always about, I got to try to acquire something that I can use so that nobody else has to go through what I went through. And that's how I looked at it. And because that's how I looked at it, I had such a difficult time understanding why these people had what appeared to me to be such a frivolous understanding of, as Shakur mentioned, this privilege to get information to better our collective conditions. So I never really accepted or understood this concept that, it's your personal property. And that's why, you can talk to people who knew me during that time in the early 80s. And that's why, I made the decision. I was accepted in 1983 to UC Berkeley Bolt Hall Law School. It's one of the most prestigious law schools in this entire backward country. And I scored in the higher percentile of the law school admissions test because I developed during that period very strong study habits and skills that I still have to this day. And so I've never had, like most people really struggle with taking tests. I've never had that challenge. So I did very well. My academics were high. I had high GPA and I got accepted. I was, in fact, the president of the Black American Law Students Association, BALSA, called me from UC Berkeley to tell me personally, like, we're going to look forward to you coming here. And what happened is that during that time, I was working with some of the student comrades, and we were organizing anti-military. I had written a play about how you shouldn't join the US military. And the play was so popular that high school, like particular individual high school counselors, teachers who had a consciousness kept wanting us to come to their schools to perform the play at their assembly. And it was very common. As soon as we would perform it, people would get in trouble. There was one person that was almost fired as a result of it. And I even got a visit from the FBI as a result of those plays that we were conducting. I was 20, 21 years old. And because of these plays, it came to my attention. Someone brought it to my attention. In fact, I think it was one of these police-oriented people brought it to my attention that we know you got accepted to law school, and we also know that you have not signed up for selective service, because at that time in the early 80s, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, they smashed the draft from the Vietnam War. So there was no more draft, but they did have the selective service process where you had to sign up to make yourself eligible for a draft. You had to do that by the time you were 18. I think you still do. And if you didn't do that, then you were in violation of the law and they threatened you with 5 years in prison. And at 21 years old, when this became aware to me and I researched it, I knew instinctively, like, I'm not signing up for no selective service. I would never be, my father told me, boy, you don't ever join that man's army. You don't ever do that. That's not for you, because he was drafted into the military and had to go overseas and engage in some nonsense for them and got nothing to show for it. So he made that clear. He didn't talk to me about much, but he definitely made that clear to me. And so I had no intention of doing that. And I knew instinctively that when I made that decision, you could not, because of Ronald Reagan's decree, you were immediately forfeited from being able to receive any student loans, any student financial aid, anything. And, my family had no money. So there was no way I was going to one of the most expensive law schools in the country with no money. And I made that decision. And at that time, nobody around me understood that. They were like, you have a chance to excel beyond this neighborhood we grew up in. You can do this. My family, nobody, my parents, nobody understood the decision that I made. And obviously, it was one of the best decisions I made in my life. But at that time, my point is that the feedback I got and the backlash I got was because people saw it as like, you're blowing your personal opportunity. And no matter how much I talked about it, nobody could understand that, in my view, the education was not about me achieving something personally so that I can make money. Even if I had gone to law school, I would have never been any kind of corporate attorney. I'm not wired like that. So I couldn't get people to understand that, though. And to them, I had just blown a major personal opportunity. And my whole point for telling that story is that to me is because the way we're conditioned to see education is that it's a commodity, like a car. It's something we own that serves our interests. And so why would you not use it to serve your interests? Like, nobody talked to me about, well, if you go to law school, you can do the type of social justice work you want to do. Nobody, like, they would ask me all the time, what kind of lawyer did you want to be? And at that time, I was young. I told them I want to be a defense lawyer. And every time I said that to people, their response would be, well, you can't make any money being a defense lawyer. Like, I told them I want to be a public defender. You can't make any money being a public defender. So I know from that their concern was never that I should have gone to law school so that I could put myself in a position to help our people. Their concern was always that I was forfeiting an opportunity to advance within the capitalist system. And that is because they view this whole education process as a commodity, a personal commodity. And along with that is the concept that education is an individualist achievement. And I think, we have to say clearly that people can make a contribution and do make tremendous contributions that don't go to college. Like, that's nonsense. Like, the concept that you have to go to college to become an intellectual. Being an intellectual has nothing to do with going to college. In fact, I would argue that a lot of what they throw at you in the university system prevents you from developing critical thinking skills, because all they're trying to do is train you to be a capitalist slave. So a lot of times people figure out ways, and I've known people my whole life who didn't go to college. A lot of them didn't even graduate from high school, including my own father. And they were extremely intellectual people. So let's smash this backward concept that you have to go to college to be an intellectualist. The one has absolutely nothing to do with the other, especially in a bourgeois society like this. I mean, you can look at people like El Hajj Malik, El Shabazz, Malcolm X. He dropped out of school in the 8th grade and never went back. So he didn't graduate from high school, but nobody in their right mind would argue that he was not an intellectual. So we have to establish that being an intellectual has nothing to do with going to college. But at the same time, the All African People's Revolutionary Party had a strategic approach of saying we need to get people who can help us spread the propaganda of African revolution. And so we want to get people who are at least attempting to have critical thinking skills. So the strategy was that let's go where most of those people should be. Not saying that's where they are, but where they should be. And so that's why the party had the strategy of going to the college campuses to recruit. And that's where I got recruited into the APRP. But it was never about W.B. Du Bois's early theories of the talented 10th being the leaders of our people. Anybody that says that that was our strategy, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It was always about just getting people who would engage in the propaganda work. And that's what it was. And I know that because that's what I did. And everybody around me, that's what they did. And we all did that. And we were never trying, you can't point to any instance where we were ever trying to be the leaders. We were trying to be the propagandists to spark people to be their own leaders among our people. So we never accepted this concept that education is an individualist achievement. We always saw it as a tool, a resource to organize our people. And that's that, even though I didn't understand that when I was an undergraduate in college, once I joined at 22 years old, the APRP, I knew this. You know, it fused everything together. And I came to understand this is all about gaining skills so that we can organize our people. And that's the only reason why I went back to get a master's degree. It had nothing to do with why I want to have a master's degree so I can have letters behind my name. It had nothing to do with that nonsense. I had observed that people who had these degrees, people listened to them because they think the way we're conditioned that if you have these degrees, you know something. And so people listen to people when they have these degrees. So it was a strategic decision for me to go through all that hell and nonsense I went through getting that graduate master's degree. It was just because now when I say that, people, oh, okay, you know what you're talking about. You may not know a damn thing, but people think you do, and they'll listen to you. And I just wanted to have that capability. And it has worked like that because everybody's trained in capitalism to respond to this stimuli. So, oh, master's degree stimuli, you know what you're talking about. And so it works on a strategic level, even though it has nothing to do with some of the dumbest damn people I ever saw in my life were the people who were in that master's program. With some of the absolute idiots that I've ever met in my life were in that program. The dumbest people, the most worthless people, people that couldn't think 2 seconds straight without getting a massive headache were in that advanced education program. So you will never convince me that college education equals intelligence. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. And so education actually, you know, we're trained has everything to do with money. And so people see it, like I said, as a commodity. Like you go to college, you get a degree, and that puts you in a position to advance within the capitalist system. And this is it, none of this has ever anything to do with the people's collective advancement. And this is problematic because, like, people my age, you know, I'll be 60 years old in a couple of months. And people my age, that's why I'll be honest, like, I don't really, I mean, I know people my age, I have good relations with people my age, but I don't really, like, I can't really hang, like, most of the time I hang with people younger because the organizing work I do, that's who's doing that. And it's just better because people my age are, you know, all caught up in this nonsense and are talking about garbage all the time. I mean, I can't sit here and listen to you talk about remodeling your kitchen. I don't care if your kitchen burns up. I can't sit here and listen to you talk about all the time how you're going to take your dogs to get groomed. That's all you can talk about. I love dogs, but I'm not going to sit here and talk about that all the time. Or your car, what kind of car you got, a Tesla? I don't give a damn. You're a damn fool. You spend $100,000 on a damn car, and that's all you can talk about. Like, that has absolutely no value to me. So I just really struggle when I'm in those environments with people in my age range, because for the most part, that's all they're talking about is that kind of stuff. And the reason why that's all they're talking about is their entire lives have been focused on this individual journey of achieving advancement within the capitalist system. So that's all they have to talk about is examples of how they've achieved progress. They got this big house and this car. That's all they can talk about. And there are a lot of us who just aren't interested in that. It's just like, I'd rather watch grass grow than talk about that stuff. And so the question really is not whether you get a college education or get a trade skill. The question is, whatever you decide to do, it has to be, as Shakur said, focused on the conditions in the world and how you gaining information and or skills can contribute to solving the problems that humanity faces. And the reason why we say that, you all, is that let's talk about the African masses for just a second. There is not a single African, I would argue this for every people on earth, all of humanity, but I'm just using the African masses as an example. There is not a single African person on the planet Earth who has achieved a college education who is not in debt to the masses of our people. Not a single one. And the reason why I say that, because I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how skilled you are, I don't care how good you look, I don't care about any of that. 100 years ago, you were not getting no college education. You were getting your tongue cut out if you tried to get educated. Even if you tried to read, you were getting your tongue cut out 200 years ago if you tried to do that. Whether we were talking about the colonies in Africa, whether we were talking about the settler colonies here in the Western Hemisphere, that and the slave systems that were set up, that was the reality for our people. You could not get no education unless it was what they wanted you to learn that was designed to make you nothing except an ideological component of the white supremacist capitalist system. That was the only type of education available to us 400, 300, 200 years ago. That's the only education this system offers us on January 9th, 2022, is to be a slave for the capitalist system. And so if you have a college degree, that is only because our people got out in the streets. Like Shakur talked about the Black Panther Party fighting for the health clinics. Most of those people didn't have cancer when they fought for that. They didn't have education. They fought for that and they got hell for fighting for that. And they did that because they knew that as a people, that was something that we needed to have in order to advance and move forward. And so our people who got their heads busted so that we could have an opportunity to go to school, they did that because they knew that was something we needed to have. And they knew that if we didn't have that, it would be difficult for us to move forward. And they knew they would never have that opportunity themselves on an individual basis, but yet that didn't stop them from getting their heads cracked open. So there's no way in hell that if you get a degree, that education belongs only to you, only the most selfish person on earth. And that doesn't take away from, of course, you did the work in school. Of course, nobody's trying to take that from you. You deserve that achievement. You can hang that up on your wall. You can let people know, put the letters behind your name, whatever the hell you need to do to feel good about it. But that does not in any way negate the fact that you owe a debt for achieving that. You didn't do it on your own. You didn't do that on your own. Somebody paid a price so that you could even have the opportunity to do it. So you have a responsibility to use those skills to contribute to our forward struggle for justice. That's just irrefutable. Nobody can deny that unless you're just a liar. And a lot of people that go through this, they are liars because your whole life is about trying to justify why you've lived 70, 80 years and the only thing you have to show for it is an expensive car. Well, if I was in that position, I would be lying too, because I would be sitting there thinking like I'm gonna be dead pretty soon, because when you get to be my age, you start thinking about death because it's looming, it's coming. It's coming at some point. It's not that long before you have to face it. And so you start thinking about, what have I done with my life? And so if I was one of those people, I would be like, damn, I need to lie because I haven't done a damn thing except spend money on a car and at a house. And I have nothing else. Like my kids, that's why And I talked to this guy, I know that, and well, my children don't respect you. And I wanted to say, well, I don't respect you. I don't know. I understand why your kids don't. Well, there's nothing to respect. You've done nothing except live in extravagance for yourself. And yeah, you bought them stuff, but you didn't even have sense enough to learn how to pass on values that had some meaning to them. So of course they don't respect you. So that's why it's important to understand that. And when we talk about this question of class suicide, you all, what we're talking about is that if you have that perspective of what the proper role of education is, then the next logical step after that is you have to use those skills you acquire not to just advance yourself through the capitalist system, but to contribute to the masses of the people. Because again, they're the only reason why you have what you have. So you look at the picture, you see Kwame Nkrumah and Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And clearly both of those Africans were educated, they achieved college degrees, they did all that, they advanced in the system, they got advanced degrees, and without question, they both used their skills to advance the masses of the people. You didn't see Martin Luther King. That's why I don't understand you all. You sit here today, some of us, and talk about, well, T.D. Jakes, what a man. What a man for what? What the hell has he done? Like all he's done is pimp Jesus to make millions of dollars. Why is that impressive to you? That tells me that you ain't worth a damn. If that's what you agree, like to me, I respect Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King because he never sought to achieve a mega church. That wasn't what that man was about. He was about using his skills to advance the masses of the people, and he paid for it with his life. That's why these Negro pork chop preachers, Reverend Chickenfoot preachers, who only use pimp the people to advance themselves individually, sit up there every Sunday talking about you couldn't pay the price because Jesus paid the price because you couldn't pay the price. And I told one the other day, Dr. Martin Luther King paid the price. You wouldn't take a bullet, you're too much of a goddamn coward. But he paid the price so that he could use his skills to advance our people. And the same with Nkrumah, and the same with Anna Picktaw, Anna Mae Picktaw Aqua, she was there. This woman had a full-on scholarship to go to Brandeis University, a Mi'kmaq woman from Canada, indigenous woman, and she had a full-on scholarship. And she said, I don't want to do that. Instead, she went into Roxbury in Boston, Massachusetts, and worked with our people to help us, gain some footing in the backward wilderness of capitalist America. And then from there, she went on to work with the American Indian movement, was brutally murdered through a COINTELPRO plot. At 30 years old, a mere 30 years old, this happened to her. This woman gave her life for her people. And she could have very easily gone and said, shit, the hell with that. I'm going to get this degree at this Brandeis, this Ivy League school. I'm going to get in one of these positions and I'm going to take care of my own needs. And I ain't doing nothing for nobody but she could have done what a lot of us do. I'm just going to take care of my daughters and do that. She didn't do that. And she paid for that with her life. And so these models, I don't know about you, but they have inspired me. And these are examples of what we mean when we say class suicide, where you use these skills to advance the masses of people. And you do that because you know the skills don't belong to you individually. The masses of people are the reason you have the skills. And so it's the masses of people who you have an obligation to use the skills for. And every person who achieves an education has a responsibility to use that education and sell out the capitalist system 100%. And stop thinking like the capitalist system wants you to think. I'm sick of these bourgeoisie Negroes. Well, riots, what good are riots? In half of them, the only reason why they have a college education is because of the urban rebellions. Because when the urban rebellions happened, 300 cities were burned in this country in the late 1960s. 300 cities, you all, were burned, including the one where I grew up. And when that happened, the capitalist system, they were worried. They were concerned. So they got together. Richard Nixon's regime, when he was president, McGeorge Bundy, the chairperson of the Ford Foundation, David Rockefeller, the patriarch of the Rockefeller ruling capitalist class family, All of these kind of people, they got together and they said, we got to do something. These Negroes are going to tear this country apart. What can we do? Well, the current report told us that there's a very small, quote unquote, black middle class. We've got to do something to give these Negroes something to believe in. If they think their lives are hopeless, they're going to tear this country apart. So that's when they created affirmative action that gave these coonish Negroes who sit here today talking about riots don't accomplish nothing, that gave them the opportunity to have college admission so that they could get college degrees. That's how they got it, because of the masses of African people who were burning the hell out of this country. As Kwame Ture said, we burned this country from plantation time to city time. And they were burning the hell, and none of them people got no college degree. They were burning up these cities. So we're not sitting here, don't leave here. Don't be an idiot. Don't leave here and say, they on there advocating riots. Nobody's advocating a riot. We're revolutionaries. And if you don't know the difference between riots and revolutionaries, then I just feel sorry for you. What we're saying is that the masses and their efforts are the reason you have a college degree. There's no question about that. I would have not gotten in college because I didn't have any money. I had grades that I brought up in community college, but I would never have gotten to the university. I didn't have any money for the university. It was only because of the Educational Opportunity Program, we used to call it EOPS, that I got in. And that was one of the set-aside programs that came from affirmative action that I just told you why affirmative action happened in the first place. So I would be an absolute idiot to sit here today, well, the riots didn't do nothing. I mean, you learn nothing when you think like that. You're only articulating the views that your enemies want you to articulate. And so we talked about some of the folks who have really used their education and made tremendous sacrifices for the masses of people. And again, because college degree is not the equivalent of being an intellectual. That's why I have the picture of Malcolm X there, because another one who used his intellectual knowledge in a way that cost him his life. No question about that, that's what happened. So this is a very important way to understand why people function the way they do. But if all you're concerned about is individual accumulation of capitalist stuff, then you're not going to ever understand that. Like people still, I tell them this story about me in Bolt Hall in law school. They act like I lost something. I didn't lose anything. I didn't lose anything. I gained from that experience. I became a better person, because the reality is that if I would have gone to law school at 21 years old, I don't see any way I would have turned out to be the person I am today. And I really like the person I am today. I don't see any way they would have started working on me with their propaganda, and it just wouldn't have turned out the same way. I'm not that egotistical to not understand that. So I didn't lose anything. And so I see the value of what Anna Mae Picktaw Aquash saw. I see the value of what Assata Shakur saw. She was a student at City College in New York when she joined the Black Panther Party. I see the value that Kwame Nkrumah, Dr. Martin Luther King, El Hajj Malik, El Shabazz, Malcolm X saw, Kwame Ture, all the rest of them, using these skills to advance our people on a collective basis. And so what skills did I get? Well, I'm a very strong writer. I'm very strong in articulating ideas, have very strong organizing skills, and I use all of those things to advance the masses of our people. I don't use them to put money in my pocket. And I learned that from these ancestors who came before me. And all I want to do is live up to their image. So when they look down on me, they are smiling at me. Or as one of our comrades in the Malcolm X grassroots movement said, when I die, I just want somebody to give libations on my name. That's enough. That's all we need. So the true role of education has to be to use those skills to figure out a way to defeat this backward capitalist system and build up another people-focused system. In our view, that's one unified socialist Africa. That's what that looks like for us as African people. And whatever way it looks like for you, that's what you have to use education. Whether you got that education through the bourgeois institution, university system, or whether you just got it in another way, you've got to use whatever skills you have to do that. That's essential. And some of the steps to commit class suicide is you got to have to ask yourself a question so you don't end up like these people on the screen as mouthpieces for the capitalist system, because that's what they are. You can't refute that's what they are. They're not African revolutionaries. That's certainly not what they are. They're mouthpieces for the capitalist system. So if you don't want to end up that way, some people do. But if you don't, then the way you have to do that is you have to ask yourself, number one, how are you using or planning to use your college education? What are you using it for? If you can't say, well, I'm doing this to use my skills to contribute to the people, then that's a serious problem that you need to think about how to do better at. Do better with that. Fulfill your responsibility to your ancestors. Do better. Figure that out. Another thing is, what's your vision? If the only vision you have is the one that's provided to you by the capitalist system, then you defeated the whole purpose the ancestors sacrificed for you. That's why they wanted you to get education, is so that you can create your own vision independent of the people oppressing us. They didn't get busted in the head, shot and killed so that all you're going to do is get a degree and think like the enemy wants you to think. They could, I mean, I got shot for that. I wish they would get up out of the grave and haunt the hell out of you. If that's all you're using your degree to do, they should haunt you relentlessly for the rest of your days. If that's all you're doing, because you're a traitor to humanity. If all you're using your skills is to just, well, you know, we gotta save America. This is our country. You know, we pay our taxes. What kind of you don't even need to go to college. That's such a basic analysis. Anybody could have come up, a roach could come up with that. That's the best you can do. That's all you can think of. And all that sacrifice to get you where you are, they shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have said, they should haunt the hell out of you if that's all you got. And what skills do you have that you have gained from the university that can benefit the struggle? I just told you, I catalog mine: writing, articulating, organizing. That's it. So what skills do you have? It could be art, it could be medical skills, it could be what Shakur is working on, public health, whatever it is, we need it. You know why? Because we need everything. So figure that out and use that. Create a plan to use that. And then how do you commit and connect your skill set with the mass struggle for justice? Well, the only way to do that is you have to be in organization. As Shakur said, and as I've said, as we've said 25 million times, and we'll say another 25 million times, you have to be in, or you can't do it by yourself, because you're gonna, even if you're the baddest person to ever walk the planet Earth, you're gonna die. And if you have evidence otherwise, please share it with us. But as far as we know, you're gonna die. So if you die and you haven't trained other people how to use your skills die with you. So what was the point? We don't make any progress. So that's why you have to work with other people to make your vision a reality. And if you don't do this, if you say, well, the hell with all you talking about, I'm gonna use this, I work for this, I'm just gonna use it for myself. Okay. I mean, we're not gonna argue with you about that, because our movement is weak right now. And so that's why you have the space to do that. But our movement won't be weak forever. And there will come a day when we will have the strength to identify our traitors, the people who stole what little resources we've been able to develop, and consciously or unconsciously decided not to use those skills for the purpose that they were intended for. And you, the masses of people, not me, the masses of people will make you pay for that. And you know what? You should pay for that. That's exactly what should happen. So we thank you all for coming here today for this very important discussion. And we're going to continue next week. Next week, January 16th, on our Ancestors' Voices, it's COINTELPRO weekend. You know, next weekend we commemorate the born day of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on January 15th, and we commemorate the assassinations of National Congolese movement leaders Patrice Lumumba, Maurice Impolo, and Thomas Okoto in the Congo in 1961. And on January 17th, 1969, the assassinations of LA Black Panther Party leaders, Apprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins. So we commemorate our marchers next week, and we also talk about the COINTELPRO efforts that played the coordinating hand in sabotaging all of them, and how none of those efforts are going to stop us, how we're stronger today despite that. So this is good. I see the positive notes in the comments. Thank you all. We don't have time to go over them, but we appreciate you all. Go to our APRP Forward Ever shop, support independent revolutionary African organization, and get those things there. It's very important. Go to aprp-intl.org, donate there, join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, go to abetterworld.me and look up all the videos here are there. You'll be able to see them there. And our Could Communist site, go there, support that site, participate in our Telegram events on a bi-monthly basis. We have all of these APRP broadcasts, Pantula podcast, Revolutionary African Women, Forward Ever, our comrades in New Mexico, Thursdays, 12 noon, do the newscast. You should support all of these. You should tell people about them, and you should support. This is real information, you all. It's not the nonsense that you're getting from the capitalist system. So support all of these. And my book, please continue to get it, A Guide for Organized Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. I was invited by the Black Agenda Report. They want to feature the book on their site. That's a very humbling honor. They asked me to write up a bunch of information about, you know, our work, and I did that. And the African respondent said, this is one of the best write-ups I've ever gotten. That, you know, I'm just humbled by that. So I'm hopeful that that continues and we can continue to do work around that book to get us free, you all. We appreciate each and every one of you. Join us next week. Join all of these programs. Do all of these things. All of these things are good for you. Join some organization. Join the APRP. I don't want to do that. Join the Black Alliance for Peace. I don't want to do that. Join the Nation of Islam. I don't want to do that. I like bacon too much. Join the Malcolm X grassroots movement. I don't want to do that. He dead. Okay, well then start the I don't want to do nothing organization except run my mouth and sit here and criticize everybody else's organization. Start that and organize for justice, for liberation, and forward progress. We appreciate each and every one of you. Forward ever, backwards never. Always stay clever. Capitalism, y'all already know it's got to go. Enjoy the rest